Hi there, in this lecture we see more Mikhail Tal magic against Robert Forbis in the 1988 National Open. Let's have a look. E4 from Mikhail Tal. We have a Sicilian defense, and Robert Forbis dared to play the Sicilian Dragon variation. We have bishop e3, bishop g7, f3, knight c6, queen d2, black castled, bishop c4, knight d7, h4, now knight b6. This is quite an unusual treatment by black, but aiming to get rid of this bishop. Clearly we have h5. This is a very interesting and logical move. If queen d3 as another example, knight takes, white could take on b3, and this should be a pleasant enough position for white, even with the loss of the light square bishop. This situation still poses some dangers for black. So the queen is attacked, and for example we can play h5, vacating h4 for the queen, for the battery, and this is okay. The queen can come back and we control central squares here, and white is a little bit better. In the game, h5 played immediately is very interesting. Knight bc4, queen e2, and in fact black grabs this bishop. And is this the heart and soul of white's attacking opportunities? Are they all disappearing with these bishops? This is the big question here. If knight takes b2, by the way, then h takes g4, with the idea of queen h2, potentially. This is pretty dangerous for black. If knight takes here, a takes, f6, white can actually strand the knight, if nothing else. Bishop c1, stranding the knights. Yeah, it's far too dangerous for black to play knight takes b2. It's a ridiculous idea. So knight takes e3, queen takes e3. We have both bishops being taken out. Bishop d7. So what an unusual situation. Black has that bishop here. Can white really have a strong attack here? White castles queenside. We have e6, f4, queen b6, and now f5. G takes, e takes, king h8, and now rook hf1, as though f6 is a major threat, squishing the dark square bishop. Black takes on d4. This does weaken the dark squares around the king. Rook takes d4, and it seems after e5, black is looking forward to getting rid of Tal's queen, which is Tal's top scorer piece. Guess what Tal plays in this position? If I give you 5 seconds to pause the video. There's a really brilliant conception here, to say the least. Okay, it's actually queen h6, and black needs to tread very carefully. Very, very carefully. We have queen takes d4, queen f6 check, king g8, and the point is here that actually there's a very, very clever point Tal makes in this position. And that is knight d5. Believe it or not, in this position there is actually an amazing move which Tal might have missed. Instead of knight d5, which looks absolutely amazing, there's actually an alternate move which is remarkably dangerous, h6. We have the thorn-pawn with the threat of queen g7 checkmate. If black tries to defend this with queen g4, things get extremely magical indeed. Rook f3 with the threat of knight e2, sometimes in rook g3, is very difficult to parry. For example, bishop c6, rook h3, believe it or not, with the threat here of rook h5 to g5. Yeah, that's the kind of weakness of the last move. There's no pressure on f5, so there's no possibility of queen takes f5 here. So this is made possible. So this rook h5 is extremely dangerous. If rook fd8, knight e2 here is the absolute strongest, and if queen takes g2, rook g3 check as a way of winning. And let's say black doesn't play bishop c6, rook fc8 is played, knight e2, king f8, and believe it or not, yeah, this is beyond like human calculation, I think, in a normal game. Guess what white should play here, which is absolutely crushing. Okay. If you think rook g3 with the idea of rook g8, that's brilliant of you to notice that, but there's a little detail to take care of. c3 to stop any rook takes c2 check. So our principal threat here is rook g3, queen moves, rook g8 to get the king back and then mate. If you don't see why rook takes c2 is helpful for black, let me just put that on the board. Rook g3. So here, just to reinforce, queen takes e2, we have rook g8 check, dragging the king to be mated. But black does have the amazing resource, rook takes c2 check instead, which secures a perpetual check, believe it or not. Rook takes b2 check, queen takes e2 check, and the checks are not running out here for black. It's going to be a perpetual check, which is why this is an amazing precautionary move, c3 in this variation, instead of going with rook g3 immediately. And after c3, even though black's got an extra move, this really shields very well the c file, and it's an unstoppable threat now, rook g3. It can't be answered. It's taking out the answer ahead of time. Yeah, it's unanswerable. Basically, white's getting the advantage in all variations after c3, it seems. So let's continue from here. Under this circumstance, the big threat of rook g3 is crushing, even if black has an extra move. After our precaution move, giving black an extra move doesn't help here. Rook g3 is devastating. So queen takes, rook g8 check, and then queen g7 is checkmate. d5 here, in this position, so attacking that queen on f6, white has queen h8 check, and here, queen takes e5 check. So this move, f takes e6, so black has managed to simplify a little bit, but in this position, okay, the king is not getting mated. This doesn't seem terrible, but it's still a big advantage for white. There's a huge threat now, rook e3. So say queen d6, queen h4 check, queen g5, and this is so dangerous for black, but at minimum, yeah, we can play like this and take out h7 with that massive h-pawn, pass pawn. So yes, it seems in all variations, no matter how it's cut or sliced, it does seem as though h6, the thorn pawn, is revealing remarkable resources in this particular position. So yes, that's a different story. So knight d5 is back to our game story though. Okay. It tries to cut across black's defensive resources, stopping queen e3 check, and not only that, threatening knight e7 checkmate. We have rook f8, which is a disastrous blunder actually. Black could have played h6, it seems. So that vacating h7, if knight e7 is king h7. If queen takes h6 with the threat of knight f6, check and mate, queen takes d5. This position is f6, and believe it or not, white should only just go for the perpetual check. This is with absolutely best play. Yeah, if white tries rook g3 check, the king can actually escape. So yes, it seems as though black made things a lot worse with rook fe8. Also, there was rook fc8, and white again is, this should be just perpetual check as long as the king doesn't go to f8. Otherwise, there'll be big trouble after check. Queen takes d6 with queen e7 as a mate threat. Black would have to play like this. And black can play like this to get the queens off resourcefully, but white ends up with a big advantage here in this endgame. So rook fe8 though is a totally disastrous blunder. There's a magnificent continuation now. Queen g5 check, king h8. If king f8, then queen h6 check, and knight f6 is mating. So king h8. We have now. Can you see what white plays here? Why is this a crushing position, you think? Okay. We have a thorn pawn, h6, threatening queen g7 mate. We have e4, trying to defend like that. If rook g8, white has queen f6 check and then mating. So e4, trying to defend. But now, this is truly magnificent. This next concept. Can you see what it is? You might want to pause the video here. So white's to kind of play a really crushing move here. Really amazing move. Super amazing. Which makes this a really iconic game, this final combination. So I'm about to reveal the next move. It's actually f6, really cementing that g7 control. And now threatening queen g7 mate, rook g8. And the point is, I hope you've realized the point. Yeah, it's actually queen g7 check. After rook takes g7, h takes g7, king g8, knight e7, checkmate. Wow. Wow. What a game. I know it wasn't entirely sound, but, you know, Tal did really well in this tournament. You know, people do crack under pressure, human beings. He's not playing against computers. So, yes, it's... okay, it is possible for black to have played h6, but black didn't. Yes, black thought this was going to be okay, and it was not. This continuation is certainly not okay after f6. It's easy to understand, perhaps, that, you know, what is white actually threatening here, given, doesn't this like refute the attack? Maybe black was getting overexcited until f6. It's really quite crushing stuff tactically. Tal is extremely witty on the chessboard with these moves like f6, with the idea of hatching queen g7. Amazing stuff, really inspirational. And that's one of the things about the Sicilian defense in general. When we study these games and look at these amazing variations, we're really training our evaluation facilities, our intuition for chess generally. We're not like trying to memorize specific moves. We're trying to get a better understanding, basically, of chess generally, which we can use in any position, independent of any position. And here we get this flavor that, you know, actually our evaluations of the bishop pair need to be questioned sometimes. This is an extremely dangerous position, even though white's got the two knights against the two bishops. It seems like the pawns were squishing the bishops here. So yeah, this ability to squish potentially the bishops, but black relinquishing, you know, that bishop. You know, this is a difficult position with f6 coming. So this was the attempted solution, but a marvelous display on the dark squares here with queen h6. Amazing stuff. But yeah, in a theoretical sense, knight d5 shouldn't have worked, but there was actually, it was still a good position if queen g5, if a computer was playing white against a computer with black, then sure, you know, this continuation is also very, very strong for white. For example, here, with knight takes e4, not delaying g7, this is the absolute scientific best way to play the position, and it ends up being better for white. Okay, in the endgame position that results after queen takes g7. So yeah, fabulous though, that knight d5 got this absolutely beautiful combination behind it.